Okay, welcome everybody, and so good to have you all here in the first live LinkedIn live stream on my chat after 2021. Thank you so much for the ones who are taking the time to watch us, and I have a wonderful Fireside session today with lots of thought leaders on a theme that have haunted me throughout all my life: wicked problems. When I started to think about wicked problems, it was like a changing paradigm in a way I observe the world, and I'm so glad that I have here a range of a group of thought leaders in this field. Every one of the participants in this fire chat contribute in a certain way to the field of wicked problems in certain different capacities, of course, as you're going to find out. So let's throw the ball to the panel. I would like you to first of all introduce yourselves. Let's start by alphabetical order, and also perhaps Chris is telling you where are you from, joining this conversation right now. A little bit of an intro, and then what will be your definition of wicked problem? And then when we have all the definitions of wicked problems that you could offer, we could probably have a more consensual view on what is the subject of our fireside chat today. Chris, go ahead.
Hello, Paul. Thanks for having me on. My name is Chris Ostrike. I'm based in Bangkok, Thailand, from the U.S. Wicked problems has been something I've been interested in since I guess when I was in grad school and learned about them. What I do is I work with organizations, particularly around circular economy, but also a lot of related things around sustainability and complex issues and things like that. What I think of as wicked problems as a definition is it's kind of a malleable thing, but basically big, messy, complex problems where there is no exact definition of where it begins and where it ends. These are things that are interconnected between different systems, and when you push on one thing, it does things that you don't expect. So they're just big, messy problems.
Yeah. Fantastic, Chris. That's lovely. So next in line will be, I think, Julia. You're on mute, Julia. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Julia Flower, and I am a seasoned organization design specialist and practitioner. I work with organizations around helping them solve their organization problems in terms of making them more efficient, more effective, and delivering better service to the customer, whilst at the same time ensuring employees have meaningful jobs. In terms of where I am at the moment, I'm from the UK. I live just outside of London, which is in Richmond. And in terms of what I understand to be a wicked problem, from my perspective, I look at it from a chaos theory perspective, where there is a lot of chaos in the environment, both internal in terms of organization systems and external. And it's, where organizations are struggling to find balance in terms of what is something they can bring externally into the internal to fix it. So, which for some reason, when they have tried in various different problems, the solution ends up being another problem. So that is my, I guess, as definition of a wicked problem.
Fantastic, Julia. Thank you so much. And then we'll also have on the studio Luis Silva. Luis, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Tell us where you're joining this session and your take on wicked problems.
Yes, first of all, thank you for having me, and thank you for having Pharmac. I'm currently managing the human resources and the marketing of also Pharmac. We do casino games and also for our clients. So it's been a very rewarding experience, as well, international one. So regarding wicked problems, I think the major problem about wicked problems is that we don't face them. So if we face them, actually, they won't be so wicked because everything is solved. We know that. But sometimes we don't want to because probably it will take change. And we have also to change ourselves during these wicked problems. And that's the major challenge regarding resolving these wicked problems. Because honestly, we studied in best business schools. We have the best frameworks. We know how to do and to deliver the best product. So why don't we solve the wicked problems? Because we don't want to most of the times.
Mm.
It's so true, Luis. Thank you so much. Okay, so next in line, Marcus Kitsch.
Yeah, hello everyone, and thank you, Paul. I'm originally from Germany. I'm based in London. It's my home for 20 years. I work in design thinking, service design, and transformation for organizations, and I'm the author of the Wicked Company. It's over there in my back, the book. And wicked problems for me are, well, there's a couple of different characteristics, how to describe them. But I think the most important ones are that, yeah, you can never fully solve them because they keep evolving. So they will never ever be solved. They can just get a bit better, or sometimes they get worse. And the other aspect is that that even when you apply your solution, they just react to it. So they're really hard to predict in terms of when you have a solution and you apply it to it, what will happen afterwards. So they need a very, very different approach. And I normally like to say there are moving, evolving targets, essentially. So that's my 2 lines on wicked problems.
Okay, cool. And then I think we have to listen to the perspective of Milan. Milan.
Yes, hi. I'm also originally from Germany. I also left. I'm living in Paris, in France, since about 10 years. I have a background in design, and I think my take is informed by this experience of trying to, design better products, better services, better experiences, better companies, better businesses, better organizations, all of these things, and often not really succeeding because there's something showing up, someone showing up, some tech thing showing up, some ecosystem thing that you didn't understand, some stakeholder who wasn't on board, someone doing the same thing like you were briefed but you didn't know, and in the end, you end up, creating things for drawers or for SharePoint or for PowerPoint, but not for, making something happen. So, so my work, we call it enterprise design, so designing better enterprises. I wrote a book about that called Intersection that came out 7 years ago, and run a conference with the same name, conference series every year called the Intersection Conference, where we have a lot of service organization designers, a lot of enterprise and business architects, and a lot of organization designers coming together and discussing how to design these kind of things. And my definition of a wicked problem is mostly that it is not obvious, which, we have whole swaths of disciplines who are very good at identifying the right solution for problems that we can pin down to what it actually is. And as soon as we are a little bit lost what the problem actually is, we have to switch lenses, we have to switch perspectives, we have to experiment, we have to work in this kind of fashion. And this is where I see also the kind of the intersection between what we are all doing, I guess, here in this panel, and the wicked problems that we try to tackle. Paul, you said in the very beginning we are contributing to the wicked problems. I really hope we are not. I hope we are contributing to tackling them, but I think sometimes we are actually contributing to the problems.
Definitely. Well, so I think we have now a better understanding of wicked problems here. I remember that Peter Shecklin, who was my supervisor in my PhD research in Lancaster University Management School, he told me that the definition of a wicked problem in itself is problematic. So to define what's a wicked problem is really the problem, right? Then when we face this, we are in front of a wicked problem, right? So COVID-19, I've been reading a book about COVID-19 from Col.lab, the founder of the World Economic Founder, also with another co-author. And he was talking about this concept of the black swan. black swan being something unexpected to happen and a change in our lives. And what this says, this author says that no, I mean, COVID-19 is a white swan. It's something that was totally predictable. We were perhaps distracted, but COVID-19 was a white swan, but it's a white swan is going to create lots of black swans. So lots of wicked problems are going to derive from COVID-19. So again, by alphabetical order, let's hear about what you think to be the most wicked problem out of COVID-19. Chris, starting from you.
That's an interesting question. Well, I guess this is where I plug my book, right? I wrote a book called Pandemic Capitalism that looked at the problems with our economic systems globally, which isn't actually about the capitalism during the pandemic, but as capitalism as a pandemic. And I think that what we're seeing in this time is that there are things that capitalism doesn't do well. There are things it does very well, but there are things it doesn't do well. And the things that it doesn't do well, we're not reacting well to. And those are the wicked problems that are coming out of this. Like, how do we get these vaccines to everyone as fast as we possibly can? How do we get them to the countries that have no access to them? How do we get them to people when we set appointments and people don't show up and they go bad because we don't have any rules in place for dealing with that? So I think that is, to me, the big picture problem that we're trying to deal with. And the thing is, it's not a certain thing that we need to solve once and then it's done. It's different everywhere. It's just a big mess all over the world. And it's how do we get all these resources together, get people aligned, and make these things happen so that we can move on with our lives. Because the longer it takes us to do that, the longer we're going to be living with this danger and this mess. So that's the big picture one for me.
Fantastic. Okay, let's keep following the alphabetical order, and then we'll do a reverse on that. Julian, your take?
Yeah. So my take on COVID is, and as for a wicked problem, big picture, is the disparities it is exposed at a health level, at a gender level, at a race level. That is where I feel that there are lots of vulnerabilities in society, in the systems, and we're beginning to see big time issues that big issues in these areas. If I come back to disparities around income itself, I am more than convinced at the moment that what we've had for the last 50 years, Milton Friedman's approach to shareholder capitalism, where the winner takes all, has really exposed how we think, how we're seeing society as a whole. And I think, again, we're talking about COVID, but there are other issues in various countries that have been leading up to problems. But COVID has opened up a very big lens for us to see how vulnerable, the depth of vulnerability among many, many groups in society that have been left alone, left behind.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Cool. So let's skip up the alphabetical order in the round table. Wish, I think it's your turn now. Wish, you're on mute.
That's right, I was on mute. I said the most important thing when I was on mute. No, I'm joking. Anyway, so my take on this subject will be regarding the uncertainty about the future that we live nowadays. Of course, we know about that. Also, the problem about recruiting the best talent that we have. But mostly, I agree with Julia. I think that the most hot topic, and it's not because of COVID, it was before. I think that COVID came, turned this point bigger than it was in the past. That is, look, the companies are social companies. We saw it on Deloitte report in 2019. So right now, the most wicked problem about companies is the culture about the companies. So I have an example that I put here my stuff will be regarding, we are really focused right now on what is leadership, for example, and it's a hot topic and it's very good, but we are not focused how to be a good team player. We don't have this kind of courses along the internet. We are just focusing, even on LinkedIn, we are just focusing on the leadership topic. And we know that to be the best leader, we have to be the best team players. And we are not focused on that. So the dystopian world that we live now regarding, of course, the social challenges that we are true on our world, for me, are the most wicked problems that we can find inside of the companies, because the companies are part of the culture and the environment and ecosystem. And so if we have problems outside, the problems are inside of the companies as well.
Fantastic. Yeah, true. And it's good that you are here, Luis, because you bring the perspective from a company who's actually doing well in the COVID-19, right? Because you are in the sector which is a digital producer, right? Of games.
Yes, we are doing fine. We didn't close. We haven't took layoffs, of course, but we took a lot of effort to be aligned from the beginning. So we had to do a strong shift in our mindset, because even though we work in software development, we were not used to do home office. Here in Portugal, it's not a very common thing to do home office, so we had to shift like from one week to another all our mindset, and we had to work through it all, and we are still working on it also. This is the thing, and this is the most wicked problem, is that we are still working on it after almost 1 year. And people tend to think, oh, we have a wicked problem, we're going to identify it, and after 6 months it's solved. It's like training. People go to training and they think that after 6 months they will be a better leader or a better whatever they are studying, and it's not. It's a work in progress all the time. So, and people tend to stop being motivated to work on the problem. So we have to still think about this situation that we are facing now, that it will be very important for our future. It will be more important than other thing that is happening right now. For at least is my experience.
Fantastic. Marcus, can you contribute here on this perspective?
Yeah, I think I'll slightly repeat what others have said just before. And I think many of our organizations at the moment are not set up to create the value that society actually needs, because they are doing better if they try to keep that away from us, unfortunately. So the incentives are not set right. And mentioning Friedman, it's been proven that that's just not working for us. Same with the current approach to capitalism just doesn't work. And I think also even if you find organizations that have as a purpose to contribute to society in a better way, I think they're often unable to do so, especially towards the more wicked kind of problems in contrast to tame problems, which are very contained and can create a recipe and then it's solved. Because the organizational structures are not set up to that. Yeah. So the way we learn, the way our skills are needed or distributed within an organization, the way we use processes are just not set up, because we're too much echoing what we established during the Industrial Revolution as what an organization is supposed to look like, which means everything on the production floor is highly siloed to the level of what Henry Ford called de-skilling. Everyone knows one skill and that's about it, and everyone has one piece of the puzzle. And management is supposed to have all the ideas. Well, that doesn't work for us anymore. But a lot of organizations are still structured like that. So the incentives are set wrongly, and even in the best case scenario, we're not set up as organizations the way we structure and organize ourselves in order to collectively solve those really tricky challenges of the future.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, so next in line, so we have a little bit of preparation time for the speakers in the round. Milan?
Yes. Well, a lot of what I would like to say was already said, so keep it short. But just before we went live, Julia said that she was about to buy a piano, and I kind of I see that around me a lot. Like a lot of people are suddenly reconnecting to other things than work. And it can be things like, I don't know, for example, all my devices now run Linux, because in the beginning of the lockdown I got really bored, and so what can I do, and then started to nerd around, and and I think this is just exposing how a lot of our work environments are actually not like keeping us engaged and busy and purposeful, and like that we actually find any kind of sense in what we are doing. And I think COVID exposed that by this forced stay at home, do your work, but otherwise, like all the other distractions from work, like work travel, and go to bars after work and so on, like suddenly were gone. And so suddenly you have this naked work, and it's much less attractive than it was before. And I think this is like on an individual level, and of course that in a bigger macro level, that means that maybe the company itself or the organizations themselves are, as many of you said, are not actually set up to contribute to anything that makes sense to us personally, individually and collectively. And and for me, this is a big spotlight on that problem, the crisis.
Yeah, definitely. And dear friends, I think that we are now facing 2021, and I'm hosting a talk with former ministers of healthcare later on this month on COVID-19 in 2021. So the day after, right? And I think that one important contribution that we all can give here to our viewers and to anyone with political responsibilities that by any chance is listening to us is really to reframe the minds of managers in this new class of problems that are wicked problems. Because I remember myself when I discovered my God, a wicked problem is a problem that has different perspectives on how to solve it. And we have to admit for all these different perspectives in order to really try to solve the problem, because a wicked problem is not a solvable problem. It's a problem that can be ameliorated just like we go in the process. So it's no like a one-off solution, right? So I think this resonates a lot for the challenges that managers and political leaders, community leaders are facing. So dear friends, what could be your contribution, what piece of advice for a manager that needs to address this new situation here? What would you, from your perspective, your best advice in this for the 2021 year that we are just now starting? Starting with Chris again.
I like getting to go first before everybody else gets their wonderful ideas out there.
Yeah.
I think what I would do is ask everyone to accept their ignorance. We all only have so much that we know. We have our disciplines that we know a lot about. We may know a little bit about other things, but any big messy problem, we couldn't possibly know enough to solve it by ourselves. And I think that that's really hard for people who are high up in organizations where they've been taught to believe that they have the answers. So I think that the more people can be open to the idea of not having that knowledge, not being able to solve things by themselves, and being willing and open to bringing people together and bringing lots of perspectives and working together to gain a better understanding of the problem, to test things and be willing to fail. I think those are the kinds of that. It's more about a mindset. It's about how you look at these problems, how you want to approach them, if you want to have a better chance of having progress in the right direction.
Fantastic, Chris. Thank you so much. Sure. So, Julia.
Yeah. So I like to feel that there is I feel there is this paradigm shift. I think a lot of people are thinking the old way has not worked. Maybe people are not admitting it verbally, but there is that feeling. And in terms of from an organizational perspective, and or leadership, is there something about revisiting our business models, operating models, to see that, is there something about having a more of a purpose-driven model? So therefore, so in the past, organizations have set up, rightly so, and they've created jobs that, going back to Henry Ford's approach to, the Tavistock system, how they believed, human beings were just supposed to go to work. I think we're moving away from that now. I think it's more about, our communities, our societies. How do we share? How do we bring together, create partnerships, create supply chains and ecosystems that are local, that add value, at a local level. Do you see what I mean? And can grow or thrive, should I say, rather than grow exponentially. But the growth is, or that thriving bit is because people believe in it. It's become shared. There's shared values, and when you get that way, you get better engagement within organizations, and people work together to solve those problems. And I don't know if anybody's read any of Kate Raworth's work at all around looking at she is very much, and also Elizabeth Henderson. They are both talking about how you can start to create partnerships, moving up, so gradually moving away from shareholder capitalism. And I know I keep using that, and I hope it's not political. I don't mean to be, but I do feel that there is an opportunity for us to reframe and revisit how we go about developing value. What is it as an organization we want to do, and where is the value? And that value comes from, it's a shared value, so everybody believes in it and everybody can contribute to it. And, you're not going to maybe not have billionaires, but at least you have a happier society.
Definitely, Julia. And that's a good point for Luis, because Luis is working in a private for-profit company. So what is the advice you give to other companies out there in terms of the value generation proposition for the post-COVID era, Luis?
Okay, so first of all, I agree. And I study a lot of essays regarding this subject, and even Deakin University in Australia says that one of the problems are the regulatory changes that we are facing now, and the policy stuff that has to evolve. So my advice for managers right now will be to study a lot. We need to study, because most of us don't study for a long time. We don't learn things new. We don't develop our creativity, and now is the time to develop our creativity, because without that we won't be we won't be successful, and even our companies and our team players and our teams. So study a lot. We have to study a lot, because we don't know anything that will happen in the future. So basically, we have to do a lot of scenarios, and the best scenario will be the one that faces more the challenge that we are facing now. So also, we have my other advice will be adapt to the situation. And by these, try to find a means to connect with people that are around you. Try to listen to people, because probably they know how to solve a lot of problems. We are not used to these kind of organizations where people are not listen, but we have to listen to people, and also to take care of them. Or otherwise, we are going to lose the talent that we have inside our companies, and we don't want that, because after this, we will need them most. Even more. Also, another thing will be to experience everything that you want to experience. Do a lot of errors. This is the time to do them. I mean, no one knows exactly what's the solution for this problem. So let's. Even my colleagues here said the same thing. I mean, no one knows. So let's face it. Let's do some mistakes in order to learn even more. This is the time to do it, at least from my perspective. And mostly. Even agreeing with Julia, defend the company values. This is the time to defend them, defend diversity, and stay in facts. I mean, we live in a dystopian world where people tend to think that we don't need to use masks. I mean, some people that tend to think that we don't need to use masks regarding the COVID-19. They denied what we are facing now. So we have to teach them inside of the companies also, and how to deal with this kind of problems nowadays. So basically, it will be my my advice: stay with people, listen to them, try to teach them, or try to stay in facts with them, and defend the company values and defend diversity, because diversity was the biggest thing that happened to our enterprise world during the last years.
Okay, thank you so much, Luis. I think that we have here a comment also from one of our viewers, Han Poker, and maybe the next intervention in line could comment on these. It will be Sync Marcus, right?
Yes. Okay. So I'm still reading.
Oh, sorry. You want me to keep
no,
it?
I think that's fine. Yeah. So yeah, I think I can. What I just noted down, expand to that. So for managers, or I think leadership, or generally, I think anyone who gives some kind of direction in organizations, I like to say, start to shift your mindset to love the problem and not the solution. Because the solutions, because we have to experiment a lot and we have to try a lot of things, the solutions that you've done 3 months ago will not be the same that you're looking at now. I'm currently just working in a project where we were given research that is nearly 12 months old, which is nearly pre-COVID, right? So usually when I'm in a transformation project, it's sometimes hard to make a new argument or refocus people back onto the problem to say, what was your problem in the first place? In the first place, and I was like, oh, we don't have time. We'll go straight and we just ideate and do that. It's a waste of time. It's like, no, it's not, because the problem you're addressing is probably 20 years old, because it's still pre-digital. And that's normally the one of the first conversation I tend to have with my clients. In this case, it was quite easy because everyone totally understood that the map that we thought we know has just been thrown out of the window 12 months ago. So it makes it much easier to go and say, let's rephrase the problem we're actually having. And I would advise most organizations to really look into the essence of why they exist. To give you an example, I was also working for Nationwide, which is a building society here in the UK, and they give people mortgages. But I think the problem that it probably should try to address, which is probably of way higher value to customers, is how to help them save money in order to eventually get a mortgage, right? So the actual wicked problem is, how do you save money? Some people don't know how to save it. Some people already save, want to do it better. It's a continuously evolving problem for people in their life, how they spend their money, how they save their money, and so on. But only some of the newer companies have redefined how they do that. Companies like Moneybox, who use behavioral science in order to nudge people's behavior to better solve this problem. So, and I think, given the question from one of our viewers, it includes the sustainability aspect as well. So I just had last week we published another episode of my podcast, the Wicked Podcast, with Jill Friend, who is all about sustainability over on the West Coast in the US. And he gave us the example of a company who looked into the sustainability aspect of what they were doing and the wastage they did. And they found that they spent as much money in paying for getting rid of the waste equal to their annual revenue. So they're creating as much. Yeah. So the potential, when you start looking outside those narrow silos of where you think the value is, and you actually look at reality, and you expand your view into the uncomfortable, uncertain area of what's more of a wicked characteristic of a problem, you'll find a lot of extra value and things and purpose for your organization. So I think as a manager, as a leadership, start looking at those areas, because that's going to redefine your problem. And the more you will learn about the problem that is at the essence of your organization, the better you will do in the market in any case. However, if you change incentives, whatever it is, for me, that's that big area where the future is. And it's, don't want to use the word exponential, but there's a massive amount of things to do out there. And that's a good thing.
Fantastic, definitely. Milan, up to you now.
All right. As someone who's external to organizations and clients, you often get a briefing And I think what we heard before is often reflected in the briefings that we get when working with organizations. And it doesn't really matter whether you're employed or not, because, you know, as an employee, I guess you get kind of similar ones. It's often, you know, often we find ourselves asking why a lot. Like, why do you want that website? Why do you want that product? Why do you want that organization redesign? Why do you want that process, and so on? And I think that has very much to do with Anna's comment, because there's short-term thinking, there's solution thinking, and there are whole industries around this, all the consultancies and so on, that are paid for providing answers. And ideally, you know, that give you, through their brand and their reputation, the security that you won't get fired when the answer turns out to be wrong. And I think this is kind of, so that's what I would tell managers. Maybe, you know, 100 is good. Maybe I would start even with like 20 years, like, you know, but yeah, maybe, like, you know, the long-term thinking bit is very important. And then what are the questions? Work with the people that know things about the problems on the questions, and engage into open experimentation, and don't pay people to be right. You know, I think that's a big mind shift. But yeah, that's what I would tell the managers.
Fantastic. Okay, guys, so I'm bringing out Martin Duffy, which was patiently watching us in the backstage of the studio. Martin will do intervention. So from your perspective, Martin, what did you capture from this conversation? And then I'll come back to our guests for a final comment, and we close the session. Is that okay?
Sure.
Martin, so all yours now, the floor.
Yeah, thanks very much, Paul. Thank you all for fantastic contributions. What struck me really about all of your contributions, the diversity of your experience and the diversity of your expertise. But if I'll try to summarize it in a flow of the ideas that I picked up as we went along. The very first thing that struck me was facing up to the fact that the problem of defining the scale and the scope is a first big challenge for many of us. So a wicked problem, its scale and its scope, we must face up to the fact that that's really difficult in itself. If we can wrap our heads around that, that brings us to the next idea, that these are my words, but not yours. But I think you emphasize the difference between reductionist thinking, which I think is where a lot of our background and experience and our organization structures have come from, versus systemic thinking, which is looking at the whole mess, the whole conglomerate of problems which become the wicked problems. So that's the second step that I'm picking up from what you've said. The third point that I took out of it is the unsolvable nature of wicked problems, which then means that whatever solution we bring into the game is actually going to contribute to another type of problem someplace along the chain. Wrapping our heads around that is a fundamental challenge. And that then brings us to the question of, do we focus on addressing the problem, or do we try to focus on our ability to address the problem? Our capacity as organizations, whether it's structural, cultural, technical, so our capacity to deal with a different type of problem, now a complex problem, as opposed to a reductionist problem. That then brings me to an idea that I'm taking from what you've said. And this is the idea of needing to change. So we need to change our organizations and our own individual thinking in order to equip ourselves to be able to recognize the problems and then to try to be able to address the problems. And I'm now saying problems plural, not just problems singular. That then brings me to the next idea, which is one of you made a very explicit point about we have a greater need to learn to be a collective rather than a bunch of individuals. So our current culture, our current social culture seems to have pushed us all down the path of being individualistic. Whereas the nature of the problems that we're facing are entirely going to be solvable from a collective perspective, not from a reductionist individual perspective. That then brings us to another key point that somebody made, which is acknowledging this point was made addressed towards the highest levels of organizations, but I think it needs to go to all levels, and that's acknowledging and accepting that there are many things we just don't know, and being willing to put our hand up and say, you know what, don't know the answer to that, which then gives us permission collectively to try to search and look for solutions. My second last point that I'm taking out of it is we then need to be willing to be experimental, and we need to be willing to take failures along the path to trying to find solutions to wicked problems. And finally, the last point I'm taking out, which was a kind of an expression I loved, learn to love the problem, not just the solution. We have to be willing to keep coming back to make sure we're trying to solve the right problem. Because if we just focus on the last solution that we put into place, we're going to miss the problems that that solution has caused as part of a wicked system of problems. And so I hope I did justice to having heard everything you said, but thank you very much, folks. That was a really, really interesting contribution from everybody.
Thank you, Martin, for your summary contributions. And now, as agreed, a final round of interventions from our roundtable speakers. Let's do the opposite now. Let's start from the end, right? Chris will be the last one to speak, if that's okay. And so, Milan, over to you, then reverse order until Chris.
I think that was an excellent summary. I think that very much sums up kind of a consensus that is crystallizing here from the conversation. I want to emphasize that what we are seeing is that there are very, very big groups of smart people with the best intentions and still not managing to actually tackle those wicked problems, mostly because of the walls between them, the walls that they put up between disciplines, between silos have been mentioned, between competency areas. And so this is why in my work, I'm now focusing on on developing a common language for enterprise-wide change through design thinking, system thinking, and collaborative experimental approaches. And I know that this itself is a wicked problem. And I would like to maybe close with that if this session for some viewers and also for some of in our panel has been contributing to creating a common language, maybe based on Martin's summary, I think we maybe contributed to solving some, or not solving, but tackling some wicked problems in the future. Thank you.
Fantastic, Milan. Thank you so much. And that's also my inspiration as well. Okay, so next in line will be Marcus.
Yeah, thank you. Great stuff. Lovely there, Martin. Yeah, I think two things. Maybe one to pick up from Milan just earlier is that I've come across a lot of, especially when you work in transformation, because you're touching so many different areas of an organization in order to, change ways of working, redefine what teams look like, and so on. So you end up having a look at a lot of messy things. And what you also come across is, as Milan said, there are currently so many practices that are trying to do the same thing. For example, when I was working on a big project over at BT, I was there as a design thinker, service designer first and foremost, but there we worked with enterprise architects and other business analysts and systems theory thinkers, right? And everyone has different tools, different words for things, and so on. So I wouldn't say wasted, but we had to spend hours just agreeing on how to name things. What's an artifact? And what's rather an Excel sheet, what's a tool and what's not? Is an Excel sheet, there's all these things that I think some kind of simpler or more universal language across practices would be absolute. I think it's very, very necessary, because otherwise you're going to disagree with each other. And even when you see big consultancies, everyone does the same thing and just in a slightly different color and sells it actually as a different thing. And then people in organizations end up being confused because they can't often see the difference. So where does Agile stop and Lean start, and where's this design thinking stuff and so on? So I think there's a lot for us to do to come together and speak a more universal language. The other aspect, the other thing I want to say very quickly is then as sort of a second step to the, love the problem and not the solution. So if you follow that and you basically say, right, we're going to try 100 different solutions a month. 2 of them will make things better, and the rest we're going to discard because they don't work, and we know why. So we have learned a lot, and we have made a little incremental step. But the other thing that happens quickly that I think needs to shift with that mindset too is to focus more on effectiveness than efficiency. So if I say efficiency, it's like just what you have, you just polish it a bit, and it's getting incrementally slightly little better. But effectiveness, for me, in the way I understand the word, is actually the ability to let go of what you have a bit more and look for alternative solutions that actually might bring better results. So to leave the old behind and look at more often at new things. So I like to often point out that and say, let's describe what you're trying to do, the program, the project, the change you're trying to get to as a change, a better, be more effective. Because efficiency, I see often people just fixing old problems and they're not able to really look at newer things. And I think when we produce 100 solutions, making every solution efficient, we won't have the time for. We just don't have the time for. We have to go for the most effective thing and then move on and yet again build on top, on top, on top. So we keep pace with the wicked problem. So that's sort of my second.
Marcus, thank you so much. And so following the reverse circle now, Julia, Luis, I think Luis Silva.
Thank you. Well, I totally agree with my fellow colleagues regarding what they said about this challenge we are facing now. I want to say one thing. I wouldn't blame the business models at all. But I think that in the end, we have to take decisions that may be wrong and not according to the business models. You asked me that before, and I'm answering you now because we rely a lot on business models. We should, of course, but right now they may be wrong. So let's try to take decisions and experiment what we think will be the best thing. Just to finish, because my colleagues already said everything, and to finalize, we have to be brave now. I think it all in the end goes to this sentence. We have to be brave, and we have to work and to teach others to make a positive impact on the collective. We already spoke about this, and not individually. We were to focus, and we still are, on the individual performance, individual monitoring, on efficiency. So let's try to make a positive impact on the collective, on the team, on the organization, and not on our own career, because most of the development are doing in this way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luis. Julia, over to you now.
Thank you. So thank you very much. And I agree, lots of good summaries, and very much in agreement with. So mine's going to be quite short. I guess for me is about spending more time and looking at current business models, keeping them a little bit more fluid in these times that we have. And by saying that, I mean, so be more flexible, be more, look at how can you be more resilient at the same time, looking at innovation, so what is it we've done in the past? How can we innovate in such a way that would create some of those better ways of working, if you like, looking at adaptability. So they're the sort of things that I would start to hone in on around looking at the business model, which will have an impact on operating models. But by doing so, get into yes, it's moving into solutions mode, and at some point we need to get to solutions. But if we start by saying, right, the more flexible we are, the more open we are design thinkers, we are allowed to fail, we are allowed to keep continuously looking at what that problem is to get to a better solution. And then that solution may become another problem, but by having that fluidity, flexibility, and recognizing that we can adapt, then we hopefully should get to continue on that cycle of solving problems.
Fantastic, Julia. Thank you so much. I also want to thank our viewers for their wonderful comments that we are getting on LinkedIn and Facebook. Thank you so much, guys. You're eating the spot. So last but not least, I think, Chris, you're next, right? And the final words for you on this Fireside chat.
Thank you, Paul. Just want to quickly thank all the rest of the participants. You've given me a lot to think about, so I'm looking forward to setting aside after this and digging in on some of these things. The few thoughts I have to close with, as Marcus mentioned, there's a tendency to focus on solutions, to believe that you understand what the problem is and to want to dive straight into solving a problem. I co-founded a open innovation platform here in Bangkok with some of my colleagues called Circular Design Lab. We bring community members in and look at wicked problems at the community level. And we try to get people in these workshop settings to spend 2, 3, 4 or more weeks thinking about the problem, doing ethnography, going out and observing, interviewing people, and really trying to understand the problem from a lot of different perspectives. And often the problem they start with is not the problem that they end up working on, because they redefine it. They understand it so much differently that what they thought they wanted to work on, either it's not the thing that they end up being really excited about working on, or they figure out that that's a symptom and they want to work on the root cause so that the symptom doesn't happen anymore. So I think spending lots and lots of time on the problem is incredibly important, and it's just not natural to do that. So it's something you have to force yourself to do. Another thing that I think is really important up front, and especially for organizations, is thinking about values and purpose. If you want to be around in 100 years, you're not going to be solving the same problem 100 years from now that you're solving right now. But if you're solving, well, let me take a step back. If your problem is you're making sure that people are fed well, that people are healthy because of the food that you're producing, okay, that's a problem you can be still solving probably in 100 years. But if you're just fixing a problem with a plumbing system or whatever it is, you solve that problem, you're not going to be needed 100 years from now. But if you have values and purpose that have a long-term focus, then you will adjust it as the problems change. Your organization will go with that and come up with new things that you'll be solving. In picking your problems, scale and scope are really important. With wicked problems, you can keep going wider and wider and wider and wider. You have to recognize what resources do you have, what time do you have, what people do you have, how big of a problem can you attack, and have a reasonable chance of making a real impact on that. So that I think is a really important one. On the willingness to fail. If you are not willing to fail, don't do this stuff. Let someone else do it. Go do something where you're doing repetitive processes. There's plenty of need for that. A lot of people aren't willing to say it, but they're not willing to fail. So don't do this kind of work. And then the last one, on being efficient versus effective. There was a management theorist in the US, Russ Ackoff, really brilliant guy. Back around the 1980s, he was talking about efficient versus effective, where if you were solving the problem of transportation by making cars more efficient, you were solving the wrong problem. Because he said we didn't need better cars. We needed better cities and better transit and things that made people's lives better, rather than burning more fuel a little more efficiently. That was an absolute waste of resources. And that if we were focusing on the right thing and not doing a great job, we were doing a less optimal job of doing what we should be doing, that would be better than doing a great job of doing what we shouldn't be doing. So I'll leave you guys with that thought.
Thank you so much, Chris. And dear friends, we have to finalize this live transmission. Otherwise, we will risk to get too long for LinkedIn Live. Let's hope that we can all stay in touch. There's the event page that was created for this fireside chat, where all our guest speakers are listed there. So you can keep in touch among yourselves, first of all, as guest speakers. It was really great to start 2021 with this conversation, because I feel that from my heart, we are contributing a little bit with this conversation. I hope for other managers, other decision makers that are facing this wicked problems to learn from our conversation today. I hope that you find it all useful. Thank you so much, friends, and let's stay in touch from now on via LinkedIn. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Paul.
you
Thank you
very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.